boys and girls. Welcome back for another episode of LendAPI Partner Podcast. I'm Tim, CEO of LendAPI, CEO of Podcast as well. Might as well be. I've got a really good friend and a super awesome guest today, Colin, coming on our podcast. And Colin, happy belated Mother's Day. I know we'll all have families here. I know you for a very long time, but for everybody else that have heard about you and what you do and all that stuff, maybe you give us a intro of what you're working on now, and we can get into a little bit about your background and history.
Sure, sounds great. So I'm Colin Darke, CEO of CompliSun, which is a RegTech company / fractional compliance team, operations team. And I've been doing that for about 3 years. Prior to that, I was with Rocket Loans, and that's where we met. I was the general counsel and chief compliance officer there. And prior to that, like working for banks and in-house at law firms. And I came to CompliSun and came to create it based on kind of the tools I wish I had when I was in-house. And a lot of those tools were lacking, so I thought I could put together a team and really execute on a vision of really simplifying compliance and legal and compliance operations and get rid of all the headaches that I was experiencing. And it's been quite the journey, and it's really fun working with different companies at different stages, especially when they have huge compliance gaps. So yeah. Where that would be like stressful for some people, it's once you see the problem and you see like where you can provide value, it's like all hands on deck and you know what to do and execute on. So those are kind of the best moments. And also just the legal compliance teams are often the ones that don't get tech resources. And so they're still living in Excel spreadsheets and PDFs and really outdated system and email for that matter.
Right.
So being able to kind of give them a system, give them resources so they can do their job better and more efficiently and actually better use of their big brains is great.
Yeah. Compliance and legal and all that stuff is more of a afterthought in a lot of these fintech companies, and they don't think about it until they get their hands slapped or about to raise a round.
Right.
It's like, oh, we don't have all these legal infrastructure. What do we do now? You know,
Right.
And it could get really expensive really fast as you sort of venture into that journey. Now, you started CompliSun before I started my latest startup, and I know you for a long time, and you've always been a good friend of mine. And from my angle, you're a button-up lawyer, legal counsel. You know, when you started CompliSun, I'm like, wow, I haven't really looked at Colin in that light. What gave you that leap of faith, sort of to jump into the startup world, and especially legal regulation technology kind of space? What happened, Colin?
What happened? Why did you get hit in the head and say this might be fun to jump into all that stress? It was really, I had been at Rocket for 8 years. A lot of and that was a good introduction to just innovation and finding a problem and like living with that problem to solve it. And when I was there, I had to wear a bunch of different hats where I had to lead up marketing and tech and, operations and servicing at different points. And I really enjoy, and that's with a lot of my career, I really love working with people to solve problems. Like that kind of drives me, especially the more complicated it is. And that as I was like working there, a lot more so than my previous roles, but it was always like, even when I was at law firms, I would put new systems together, new processes together, because things didn't make sense to me. Like if things were clunky and like red tape and it was such a waste of time, it really bothered me. So I'd do new systems, which in a law firm is not always great, because then you're billing less hours, you're doing more, you're being too efficient. Like nobody likes that. But so then with kind of I would say the training at Rocket of product development and really working with like this managed collaboration with different teams. I got really comfortable working with tech teams and product teams.
Right.
And
Right.
so that comfort really allowed me to kind of jump both feet in because we did a ton of different products there, and we
Right.
had to like come up with a ton of different solutions. And then
Hmm.
seeing, when we were there, even there was a tech solution, and a lot of these tech solutions were built and designed by um, tech folks, and then kind of pushed on legal and compliance.
Right.
So we vetted, and we were trying to use at least five different like big project ones, and they all kind of fell to the wayside because they were too
Right.
complicated and they didn't kind of work with how we worked. They
Right.
they might have talked to some compliance professionals on occasion, but they didn't really live that life of really needed to tell your compliance story, knowing where everything is at any given point, trying to be proactive versus reactionary all the time. And it was an issue and it was frustrating, especially when you're at a complicated, fintech finance company and you're putting out little fires all the time. That's all you're focused on. And you're
Right.
trying to, like, when you can innovate or make things a little simpler, you put in some systems, and it's still you're running a mile a minute. So then when
Right.
someone, a regulator or just an executive comes in and's like, show us how, like, you're complying with all the laws, or show us our complaint, like, show us all these reports. It's not, there wasn't anything to just push a button and then you show it. It's always, and this was with a lot of companies, you have to step back, do a PowerPoint presentation, grab
Hmm.
a team to like put together different parts of it and like explain how they're doing their job day in and day out versus them doing their job day in and day out. So
Right.
you take them off the floor, putting out the little fires. The little fires don't
Right.
go away, and you spend a couple weeks doing that, which isn't
Right.
efficient. And
Right.
then I also saw, and this is even with like different companies, where a regulator would come in or a bank partner would come in and say, show us how you're staying on track of marketing materials, tracking for lending, complaint management. Show us all these things that
Right.
your PDF says you're doing for compliance management. And every day that passes, they get less and less confidence in that you actually are doing the things you're saying you're doing. You
Right.
are on the ground, or often you are on the ground, but to tell that compliance story takes too much time. Um, and so you eventually show it to them, and they're already not in a great mood because you made them wait. You couldn't just push a button and
Right.
show it to them. So that's like the initial thing with my company was just to be the single source of truth,
Right.
leverage some cool AI, so it's like this closed environment. So you're not putting all your policies and your sensitive stuff in an environment that is just Claude. It's like, it's your own S3 bucket. It's got all the AWS stuff.
Sure.
But I can quickly show it to somebody and say, like,
Right.
here's our system, and you can print out these reports, and you can feel comfortable that we're doing what we're saying we're doing, and anybody on the team, can go in and kind of just ask a question of like, what would Colin say about our, SCRA process, and then
Right.
it comes up and shows you and gives you the documents. So
Right.
right out of the gate, it's a lot more intuitive and easier to use. And that was just like the first iteration was better than all the tools we were using prior. And it was also like I would ask, the tech team to build, and I love tech teams, but like I would ask the tech team to like build me X, Y, Z to make my life a little easier. And it would be like, oh, that's going to take, 6 months if we don't have the resources.
Right.
And we're like, okay, so we want to ask for it. And then like once I'm out on my own, I have my own tech team. I'm like, hey, we need to do it. We need to do these things. It'll make my life easier. And then it's like within 48
Yeah.
hours, we have like a prototype. I'm like, oh.
There you go. Yeah. Now, you've touched a lot of things. I talk to a lot of fintech startup founders. These founders may have sort of worked in the industry for a long time, or this is their second, third company, but they still think of compliance as SOC 2, Type 1, Type 2, HIPAA, maybe PCI. They don't think about anything else outside of it. not because they don't care, it's because it's a scary, daunting task. You mentioned, here's what a PDF said, documented, and here's what you're doing. A lot of people don't even have that PDF file or don't even know how to create, policies and procedures that they should follow afterwards. How do we start there? And what does CompliSun do to solve that problem to be less scary for the founders out there? What's your take?
It's actually interesting. So first, I designed it so that we can do an onboarding, and it walks you through like the questions as if I was your attorney.
Okay.
Like, what's your business? Where are you
Right.
doing business? How are you getting clients? And then takes all that information in, and then does a gap analysis where it's like, based on what you said, I would expect you to have these 5 policies.
Right.
You have 2 of them, and the 2 you have are kind of missing this and this. So like I come up with a plan of action to like close those gaps. But I also did a free version, which I called like CompliSun Guardian, and you can go in and similarly do this like self-assessment.
Right.
And you describe your company, you describe what you're doing, and it gives you this compliance calendar, and it gives you these like tools, so like on your own you can start mapping out what a compliance management system would look like.
Okay.
And then you can upgrade obviously to like work with my team and like work with seasoned compliance folks that are experts. But like out of the gate, like you said, like that's always like the last thought somebody has. So I want them, especially like really new fintechs, or some of them have been going on for a while and just are kind of ignoring any compliance
Right.
management until like they want to partner with a bank, and the bank goes, show us your compliance management system, and then they call me.
Right.
So this is, they can get the free version. There's a pro version too that also has some fractional compliance team, but you can kind of start working with it to, even if you have like an administrative person on your team or an ops person, they
Right.
can start living in it and understand like, oh, because we're reaching out to customers this way, or because we're doing this, we should have this complaint management system. We should be doing a risk assessment on these products. And it breaks it down so it's a little less stressful, and it's using, prompts that I put together based on 20 plus years experience. So
Right.
I feel comfortable, like, if I talk to this bank in 3 months, even though I can't afford to, spend a ton on compliance right now, I at least can start answering these questions and start building out
Right.
things that, even including training, that allow me to have the discussion and not scare them or scare an investor that I don't have any idea what I should be doing. And so
Right.
I have an idea. I put some things together, and once we reach this milestone, I'll hire a compliance person, or I'll hire
Sure.
a fractional team. And then
Right.
it's like, okay, you're mature, because that I've seen a lot too, where investors, they need that comfort that you're mature enough to know some of the risks that you're getting into.
Right.
So you might not have it all figured out, but you can't ignore it. So ignoring it's going to lose the investor. But
Right.
if you like figure it out, then it's like, oh, they could help you too.
Right. Some startups have the wherewithal to kind of hire a fractional compliance person. That person is probably super busy. The Guardian, the free edition, get them started. But I guess even if they have a professional to help them, they can still use the pro version to help them along their whole process. Right. It's not. There's a lot to remember. Lots of
Right,
things to check
right.
off.
Yeah,
Right.
they could do the free version, and still have some, you know, compliance consultation or trainings that they
Right.
can buy, or the pro version, which is not expensive, and then that has like office hours. So
Right.
just using the system and coming up with like, hey, it said, I needed this TCPA disclosure. I'm not really sure what that means, and then I would have the office hours and kind of just explain high level.
Okay. So office hours are not fractional compliance officer.
Right.
That's very
Yeah.
academic. So
That's
tell us about that experience.
yeah. So that's actually interesting too, because
Yeah.
my initial, when I first started building the company, the idea was I'd make the technology super intuitive and just sell the technology to these startups or these banks or
Right.
financial institutions, and then help them install it with their team. Right out of the gate, people are like, "Oh, this is great, but you run it for me."
Well,
It's like, this is cool, but I want you to do this. So then it grew into um, first me being a fractional officer to help some companies launch their CMS, and then hiring a couple more compliance analysts, hiring
right.
a BSA/AML expert, hiring some compliance legal operations experts. So it just keeps growing to meet kind of the need folks have.
Right. Right. We'll switch gears a little bit. Um, we've been hearing a lot of there's two parts to this. Lots of uh, third-party BNPL players that are applying for bank charters. Uh, I feel like there's an opening right now. Um, and whenever I see a lot of people rushing to get something, something's going to blow up 2, 3 years later. What are your thoughts there? And more generally, what are your thoughts in this whole embedded finance, BNPL? What are some of the things to watch out for if there's anybody in the audience that wants to get into that space? Start with bank charter, go rush.
Yeah, it's interesting because, and I think the folks that are really serious about it are talking to obviously attorneys and compliance professionals that
Mhm.
have lived with what that means to get a bank charter. So even if it's a streamlined regulatory environment right now, it's not going to be forever, especially in the banking space, because it is this true fiduciary obligation. You're this financial intermediary between people and their funds and their money, and it's this it carries a lot of weight no matter what, and
Right.
that's like legislated in federal, and in states have their own like banking framework and guardrails.
Right.
So going into it, and one, they want you to have and hire professionals that have the background to understand all that comes with the bank charter.
Hmm.
Two, if it's not now, it's going to be in the future where you're going to have to show your compliance management system. You're going to
Right.
have to show that you're on top of things, especially like you said, when we see gold rushes like this, then a year from now you start seeing complaints, and like some of them are just not being financially rigorous like they should be, and they said they would be when they're getting this charter.
Right.
So then, or disciplined, financially disciplined, um, and so those things are going to happen, and
Right.
new regulators are going to come into all these organizations, especially like if at the midterm some of the dynamics shift. And you need to be able to answer questions, and you need to be able to say why you took certain approaches. So
Right.
if you have a system in place and guardrails in place today, even if no one's asking about it, you're going to be better off a year or 2 years down the road when someone will ask for it,
Right.
and say like, this is how we've been doing it since day one. And
Right.
in my experience too, it's always been, even if there was an environment where there was less regulatory burden for a certain period, it's always served us well to be more conservative. Not to the point where you're stifling innovation, to the point where you're just being pragmatic and thoughtful about how you're going to scale every
Right.
aspect of your business.
Right.
Like, it's great to focus on the consumer and the product and how you're going to scale that and build it, but you just have to like pause and have that thought of like, how are you going to do that for legal compliance operations too? And
Right.
people that do that, that recognize that right out of the gate, do so much better,
Right.
term, and don't
Right.
have these huge, obstacles in like, and maybe it's like someone's going to acquire them and it gets blown up because they didn't have this process
Right.
in place.
Right.
Um, and like that's even apart from like it's not even a regulatory, exam. It's just you want to grow your business, and then you come across somebody that understands the future risks. So they're trying to like if they're going to invest or if they're going to acquire, they need to know that you thought of that. And if you haven't, then you're going to spend a ridiculous amount of money fixing everything.
Right,
And
right,
and I've actually come in for that too, where a company scaled quickly and did the bare minimum, and then like I have to come in with a team to kind of say like, okay, now you're trying to get this bank
right,
partnership or you're trying to get a bank charter. We have to like redo all of this, and they often have like employees on the ground that like document
sure,
the process. They want to do the right thing, so they're doing the work, but it's not scalable. So it's like if that person's not there one day, like the next person doesn't really know how to
right,
start where they left off.
right. Yeah, the second part of my question was some advice for fintech startups. Like you kind of answered them already. I also see a lot of big retailers, brands that are sort of leaving their fintech partners want to do it themselves. They're not a fintech startup. They're not a bank. They're not a BNPL player, but they carry a lot of weight, a lot of brand recognition, and they want to sort of in-house or make their own. Any advice for those people that are selling product and services out there that may own a couple hundred stores, a big chain that wants to do in-house financing now? What do they need to watch out for?
And this is, I'll try to frame it as like, so I've seen at like big companies and this is even where they do shared services and everything. The big companies that really put the startup that they want to do. So they want to get into fintech, they want to get into this new service where they're pretty hands off. So they hire good leaders and they act more like a venture fund and say
Hmm.
like, okay, here we're putting this together. And this is like it might be easier if they just acquire the company they're not they don't want to partner with anymore versus trying to think that all their enterprise people can do it because enterprise people, especially if they've done that forever, there's just a inherent red tape that comes with their mindset of we have to and the larger the company is they do need speed bumps and roadblocks on
Right,
occasion. So if you can do it where it's an island and you're you know, putting oversight over that so that they can give you reports and show you that they're being responsible and
hmm,
executing the plan versus just saying like, okay, this division, hey, you guys are now a fintech too, so like put this, do what this other company was doing, drop everything else, and like obviously
right,
they can't drop like anything, and then they have to answer to multiple stakeholders based on like what they had been doing versus what they need to do now, and that messaging, if a CEO is running with that today, like that messaging is stressing out that team, and it's going to lead to frustration because that wasn't their mandate for
right,
you know their history. So it's like this is
right,
a mandate that they're not equipped to just even like process correctly, even if some of them might think they are, but it's better to have this like new team or innovative like fintech that knows how
mm,
to work in that space and kind of push back and challenge the status quo of kind of an enterprise versus trying to like develop it.
right. Like, I guess, an example would be Toyota Financial Services, right? They make cars, but over the years, they kind of said, hey, financing is actually a big component of what we need to do to push out these products. But that took years, right? That took a lot of professionals to get in. I've seen a lot of these, like Toyota Lights of the companies just want to marry up with a fintech and hoping for the same result. But it puts a lot of stress on the fintech and also puts a lot of stress on the corporation to do it themselves, to do it in-house. But what about some of the you had mentioned the word prompt earlier in this podcast. I could probably imagine a lot of fintech startups are heavily leveraging AI to solve their compliance issues. I've asked the AI a couple of questions here and there myself. Um, but on the bottom, it always says, this AI tool makes mistakes. Double check your work, right? That's where the that's where you get shivers, right? How do founders strike a balance? We can't ignore the technology. They're probably going to go to the search engines, and an AI tool is going to ask the first couple of questions. Uh, at what point do they need to turn over to an expert? And whether the banks or partners or whoever they're trying to show their compliance effort to, well, they should have one anyway without showing anybody. At what point do you need to turn to a compliance officer or fractional or somebody that has the office hour to give them the sort of the rubber stamp of approval? Wrong phrasing, but some kind of a human
No,
thing.
yeah. It's definitely coming up more and more, and it's interesting. So in our system, I have like prompts that I've written, like how I would approach a problem.
Right.
So I want folks to like go into my system, use the prompts, and then I can walk them through kind of like how they should analyze it.
Right.
Because I also get folks that don't want to do that, and then they'll write contracts, which is super scary, and they'll try to like simplify the contract that I wrote. So like my contract's 22 pages, they try to simplify it down to 2 pages, and it leaves out so much, and it leaves out so much expertise because I've obviously seen when everything goes bad. So like those are often the clauses that fall out, the ones that are protecting against what happens in like if someone files bankruptcy, or what happens in like 5 years when the parties don't really like each other anymore, or there's different people negotiating. So it's really important to have a advocate in legal that will kind of push back on people pushing those things out the door, but giving them a framework, like our platform, or just like some rules around the best use of AI, because there's also like scary usage where like companies have their enterprise accounts, and then they actually know what some of the searching is. And like one story of like a employee like was frustrated at their boss, and they started searching, do they have a claim against their boss? And
Oh, geez.
ChatGPT is saying, oh, of course you do this, this, and this, and like doing it all on AI, and then sending these emails and this complaint, and it was just all wrong. Like they didn't have a claim, but they don't know they don't know the questions to ask, and they don't know how to like. You're buying with legal and compliance some critical thinking of, and they've just seen it before. So
Right.
if they went to a lawyer with some of that, the lawyer would be like, yeah, you don't have a claim. You're just going to like cause a huge headache. And there's been, attorneys using it. This is why like every company needs a AI policy and process, like where it's mirroring the fact that people are going to use it, and you want to do it in a safe and safe and sound manner, so you don't hurt yourself. So there's been like a lot of attorneys using AI in not a great way, where they don't, and like by the nature of the profession, if you turn something in as an attorney, like a response to a complaint or a summary judgment, the other side's going to research everything you cited. And so there's been like 1,300 attorneys disbarred because they're submitting materials that have made up cases. Because it's
I've heard about that. I read about that. Yeah.
Or studies, or things that they're referencing, and and some of these are the attorney on the other side has been doing it for like 40 years, and you come up with this new novel argument, and they're like, we have to check every source they have, because I've never, how in my 40 years this 1988 case never showed up, and it's like, because it's not a real case,
Right.
So
That's
yeah, you need a second set of eyes. You need people double checking everything, and that's with these when they come up with contracts too, that I've seen, where some of the clauses and some of the approach makes sense. If you're the one receiving the goods versus the one selling the goods, and the person
Mhm.
like drafts a contract that's totally hindering them. I'm like,
Right.
it's a great contract. Uh,
Yeah.
you
These
gotta,
AI tools feels like a nice but stern uncle. It'll always like sort of say, "Yeah, you're right, but here's, some more you got to think about," right? It kind of just
right.
got into that cycle of self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, that's
On
the
that
thing.
same
Oh, go on.
on that same topic, we're gonna come back to that in a second. On that same topic, I see a lot of builders using AI tools to build financial products. Building customer onboarding, decisioning tools as well, servicing and all that stuff. Um, to me, since I'm a builder, that seems that seems dangerous. I guess you can get one or two pages and it kind of just loses its mind. When you look at the compliance infrastructure that you're building for these fintechs, and then you look at their product and all this AI slop out there helping to create this product, where do you draw the line there? I mean, you're not there to give them engineering support or product support, but what can you give us some words
Yeah.
of advice on using AI tools to build products?
Yes, because my company just came up with like a whole um, our approach to building with AI,
Yeah.
and so your question is very very timely. So what we've been doing is one the tech team, and they're very versed in like enterprise technology and doing things the right way, so it's like really protecting the code and the client's environment. And I, of course, like uh, jumped on some vibe coding and like, you know,
You got to taste the code
this is
before you.
this is why the policy came up because I'm like, here,
Yeah.
like this is the perfect site. This is like
Right.
exactly what I want. And they came back and they're like, no, like this is 7,000 lines. It should be like 20.
Oh
and,
my. Okay.
um, so then they gave me like basically prompts for the vibe coding. And what we're doing is using it as prototypes. So my team will work with a company and then say like, okay, here are the gaps. Here are some of the you need complaint management, you need monitoring and testing. Let's prioritize this. This is what it could look like, and then we get the prototype working and looking in, in a way that the client loves it, and then us as compliance professionals like, yeah, this is how it should work. This is intuitive to us, and then it gets pushed. Actually, it stays in our like my GitHub versus the core CompliSun GitHub. The enterprise team looks at it and starts borrowing and improving it for our core system. So then they have kind of the roadmap, and it's really um, better requirements gathering because it's really saying like go play with it. Those are the requirements. That's how I want it to work. And then we have our meeting, and the idea is we're doing it where some of the enhancements would take like a couple months, and now it's like doing the prototype, getting the client to love it, and then working with the tech team for them to then code it the right way.
Right.
It takes a week. So then like we're going to be able to like launch products that are in the safe environment faster
Right.
just because
Right.
more people are collaborating or involved. So I think that's a good way to do it. Like don't just do what my initial instinct was of like, I don't even need you guys. Here's why you need
Sure.
it. Like, oh, all right.
Yeah.
That's what
And
people do.
that sort of seep into how you're going to guide your clients out on building sort of their products, right? I mean,
Right.
a lot of them are vibe coding and it turned into a slob where they thought this is great customer experience, but turned out to be skipping 4 or 5 different steps in compliance and consents and
Yeah.
check boxes and all that stuff.
Yeah, and
Going back to
it'll streamline things that should not be streamlined.
right, and it'll hurt you less at the end because it will never pass mustard, in front of their clients and whatever it might be.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It's like ours is getting, prototyping and then putting it into what's being like SOC 2 tested.
Right,
And like it's like our guardrails are still there, and we're just, iterating faster because we're embracing vibe coding in a responsible way. So it's almost like responsible innovation.
right,
Always
right.
been my, mantra, so it's like I've got to like make sure I follow that.
That's a good phrasing, responsible innovation. Going back to your earlier career or mid-career, you were managing these like multi-billion dollar products, funnelling through billions and billions of dollars of loans. The compliance structure is very unique, as you mentioned earlier. For some of these like new startups, new ideas, novel ideas, or innovation, do you give them a framework to think about what they're doing, and then going a little bit more describe something that's pertains to their business? Because I can imagine that every single client that you work with probably have their own ideas and unique processes that might require some unique compliance angle. What are your thoughts about generality versus specificity, especially when it comes to compliance stuff?
It's having a like a business mindset and knowing um, that a lot of the rules or a lot of the guardrails come down to
Yeah.
risk tolerance. So
Okay.
sometimes like if you haven't even launched or your product in and of itself is pretty low risk. I'm
Right.
not gonna say like spend all this money and get all these. You need to hire these 20 people to stay on top of complaint management when you get one complaint every 2 years, right?
Right.
It doesn't make sense. You like
Right.
some of that like you can really have like a very watered down system, and that's actually in line with what regulators are expecting. It's this ongoing process. So
Mhm.
it's not this like point in time, this is what your compliance system has to look like today and forever. It's you have to have some of this understanding of what it should look like and some guardrails around. And then just like anything else, it grows and changes as you grow and change. And so like if you then spot like a break in your process that should be better, and then you fix that. Like that's what they want to see versus, um, you didn't have a process in place or uh, you,
Right.
you know,
Trying to retroactively make something up. you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's like you had a uh, like really heavy-handed approach that once it was like battle tested. It showed that it was just slowing things down and not really mitigating the risk.
Right.
And you just stuck with it because it was heavy. It was like tough to unwind. And
Right.
the people that are like, you know, using their flexing their innovation muscle and saying like, how could we do this better, and how can we be more, friendly to our consumers and comply and innovate that way. Like they
Right.
do well. Like and then you can tell your compliance story. You can be like, we did this, it didn't work. Then we did this, and it worked a little better. And then we like
Got it.
kept iterating.
Got it. You going back to that Go Rush topic where we're talking about bank charters and all that stuff. Now there is, my God, international remittances, USDC, Genius Act. Colin, how do you even stay on top of these new new frameworks and rails and being moved around and tons of startups, tons of money going into the space? It just sounds scary to me when you move hundreds of millions of dollars without a whole lot of a check and balance, and it doesn't go through our standard sort of rails here in the U.S. Thoughts around just stay on top of these whole thing.
It's yeah, that's why it's great going to conferences and like hearing
Okay,
experts because there's
right.
people day in and day out focused on it and like watching webinars because it's moving quickly. When there's not guardrails, it's just you've been at it long enough, like
Mm.
something's going to go wrong. I always see that as a strategic business opportunity for someone. So you see like a lot of folks growing quickly and they might not be doing it the right way. So you can be a second, third mover that does it a little slower or a little more, nuanced in your thinking of like, hey, there's going to be a hack. There's going to be something bad
Sure.
that happens here. So and this was even with I would say with unsecured consumer loans. I initially was putting some like frameworks in place that were in the mortgage universe. So it wasn't required on unsecured consumer loans, but
Right.
there were gaps, and it's like, okay, this is already something that's tried and true to close this gap, or to at least have it as a system that can be scaled. So we'll take this approach, and then that was just a baseline, a thought process of like how to initially build, and then sure enough, a few years go by, and a few folks that
Right.
went quickly and didn't have guardrails like fail, or they like get huge fines, and
Right.
then you can a regulator comes to you and like asks you a question about this company that just had a huge fine, and you're like, oh, here are the guardrails we put in place, so like you don't have
Got
to
it.
worry about us. And it's
Interesting.
that focus of like, we're super boring, and
Right.
here are the things that make us boring, so you can go on to the next guy that is a little scarier.
Right. Right. Speaking of conferences and maybe some industry associations, I know you've been involved in this industry as a whole, right, for many years. Any thoughts about these conferences that are happening in DC that you're involved in? Um, should a startup even attend or join some of these associations too early, too not too early? What are your thoughts there? Just get involved.
um, I think those conferences, and especially like right when I loved it when we first started them, because you're bringing all the right people into the room to have the discussion of what the real issues are, what some of the myths are, and the reality are. And it is a great, and I will plug the American FinTech Council, the summit in November. Everybody should go to it. You learn from industry experts, and you learn from regulators about what's keeping them up at night, and like what best practices are. And I mean, I just went to a local conference, and it was just about business law, tax law, and like a lot of real boring stuff. And there was, of course, an AI section,
Sure.
and going over these new AI laws. And as you hear from people that are living with some of these new laws or new business models, and they're living with it day in and day out, and then you get to go to a conference and then kind of listen to their approach to things. It just gets you
Right.
thinking about like, oh, I can implement this, or I
Right.
can like that's something that might impact this client or this client. So it's always, you can't go to conferences nonstop, but like going to a few conferences annually, like to stay on top of everything, especially
Right.
like I feel like in the fall a lot of the good ones start up again. One, it can inspire you to like approach problems differently, and two, you
Yeah.
just meet people that are doing interesting things, and looking and sitting with
Yeah.
interesting problems. So it's fun.
Let's plug something else. Let's plug Detroit. I got a chance to spend a couple of days there while working together. The cost of living around the coast are just insane. People often, overlook places like Detroit, right, or the Midwest states. But what attracted you, Colin, to stay put there, build there, and have a lot of connections there? Give us a little bit more take on that part of the world.
Detroit is fascinating, and I love like, so I grew up in the area, moved to Boston for a little bit, but then came back, and it is it's always had a lot of good institutions, but then a lot of the graduates from those institutions, like U of M, like would leave, and the downtown Detroit was, it earned its reputation of being rough and tumble. Still had like a lot of good cultural institutions, but not that great to walk around in like the whole city. And then we talked about Rocket, and that was one of those. He moved down. I want to say, I forget when they moved down. Probably '05, or around there. '08, and just went all in on the city of Detroit and Gilbert in particular. So the city is so vibrant, and you have so many young people down there, and you have all these new companies and new restaurants and new buildings popping up all the time. It is, um, you know, I feel like I loved it for a lot of different reasons. and I always had to like talk people into why it's great. And then over the past, 15 years, it's like I don't have to talk people into it. I have to like, you have to come here, you have to see it for yourself, and then you see all the innovation happening, and it's compounded. So once some of those structures were put in place, and like people were innovating, and like companies were actually doing well, more and more people felt comfortable going in there. And I'm doing Michigan Tech Week is coming up in 2 weeks, and then
Okay.
it's going to be at the Michigan Central Station, the big train station that was downtown that was been abandoned forever. Then Ford Motor Company bought it and turned it into an innovation center, and it's just like this
Wow.
stunning um, incubator for like new technologies now. And so
Wow.
they're going to do Michigan Tech Week there, and there's going to be all these conferences and just all these creative people doing creative things, and it's kind of part of the DNA now. It's like building and hard work's always been there, obviously,
Yeah.
but it's more this little small businesses and little innovation hubs are popping up, and it's a blast. And it's I go to San Francisco and New York quite a bit, and like you're seeing that same like brain power here, uh,
Wow.
and it's just fun. It's fun to be a part of it and like try to, you know, advocate for people coming and checking it out anywhere I go.
Well, now we know where we can find you in person,
Yes.
Michigan Tech Week, and American FinTech Council, big conference coming up in November. That's a good one as well. And I encourage everybody to find Colin. Easy to find, very nice person to talk to, obviously, at CompliSun.com. Uh, and I'll put all this stuff in the show notes. Colin, it's been a pleasure. Uh, I'd love to see you in person.
Yeah, I come to Detroit.
Yeah, exactly. Are you headed out to like Money 2020, Finovate Fall in New York City, and any of those
Yeah,
shows?
yeah, and
Yeah,
I was just in New York. I go to New York quite a bit.
right.
It's like an hour flight, so it's not bad at all.
Yeah,
Um,
there you go.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm going to hit all the circuits. I think I need to create a big conference here, bring all
yeah,
the folks here.
exactly. Love to bring everybody into Detroit. I saw the innovation about 10 years ago, maybe longer than that. I can only imagine what it is now.
But yeah,
Uh,
it's crazy.
yeah, yeah. Well, Colin, thanks for jumping on my podcast. We'll get this thing posted shortly. Um, have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, Chip. Appreciate it as
Yeah.
always. Take care.